Welcome to Bicycle Retail Radio, presented by the National Bicycle Dealers Association. Bicycle Retail Radio brings together retailers, vendors, advocates, and thought leaders for honest discussions about the latest issues facing bicycle retailers. The podcast dives deep into the challenges and triumphs of the bicycle industry, providing an in-depth look at the person behind the profession. Aiming to deliver content that's both relatable and thought-provoking, offering real-world tips and insights to help you find success in the bicycle industry. There's a human side of the business, and the podcast aims to share stories, experiences, and strategies that you can apply in your own shop. Whether you're looking for inspiration, practical advice, or a sense of community, you've come to the right place. The National Bicycle Dealer Association has a rich history of supporting retailers across the nation. Founded in 1946 with a mission to strengthen specialty bicycle retailers through education, through research, through communication, and through advocacy. The National Bicycle Dealer Association is proudly supported by our members and our membership. If you'd like to learn more about the benefits of joining, please visit nbda.com.
Attention, bicycle retailers. The NBDA Retailer Summit is coming to Las Vegas, March 25th. Join over 150 of the industry's top retailers at Retailer Summit West, an exclusive one-day event featuring powerful insights, hands-on workshops, and unbeatable networking opportunities. Spend the day with top experts in our industry. Don't miss this chance to elevate your business. Learn more and register at nbda.com.
Welcome to Bicycle Retail Radio. This is Heather Mason, NBDA President. My guest today is Scott Roth, founder and director of Bike and Soul. Bike and Soul is a bicycle repair shop and nonprofit organization located in East Greenville, Pennsylvania. They are dedicated to helping people enjoy the ride of their lives. Bike and Soul offers a variety of programs to help their community, such as bike safety classes and bike donations. Scott is a man on a mission, and I was thrilled to chat with him. We talk about the history of Bike and Soul and how you as a retailer can create a more community-focused and mission-driven business. Hope you enjoy. Scott, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm totally stoked to be here today.
Yeah, this was one of those things, again, that Melanie Fry, our membership coordinator, I think spoke with you, and she's like, all right, Heather, Scott's doing some pretty amazing stuff. You have to have him on the podcast, right? That's what you remember. You talked to her. And
yeah, no, she just asked me what we did. So I just told her what we did. And next thing you know, here we are.
It's so awesome. It's so awesome. I, as I always do, getting ready for my guest, did a little research of you online. And to be honest, I don't even know where to start. There's so much. You're such a dynamic human. But I kind of want to start like at this top level, spiritual level. So okay. Listeners, Scott is the public face of Bike and Soul. And so besides 20 plus hours a week at the shop, you have a full-time job as pastor of Line Lexington Church.
Yep.
I don't know how we juggle it all. And as a pastor, the research I did, it's like you really work on connecting with people and that spiritual side. And I believe you kind of pulled that over to the shop, and the motto was bicycles fix everything, and we fix bicycles.
Yeah,
I like that. So can we just like open that up a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I think the best thing for me to describe it is that I live very intentionally. So I don't want to waste my days. I've had 2 near-death experiences in my life. I look at the world a little differently, and I believe that in the moment, I look at the way the world is, how complex humans are, how the world that we live in is so complex, so that, begs me to ask those deeper questions about life, right? And that puts me in that space. Even getting into becoming a pastor was through me working with students in a town that I used to live in. And I find that there's all like we all have these desires to wonder about what else is out there. And for me, that's where a lot of that comes from. And when it comes to bikes, we found that bicycles are one of the best ways to connect with another human. It's very rare that I see anyone sad on a bike. Like, I think the joke is if someone's running and they're sad, tell them to stop running and ride a bike. Right? Like, there's always that
Yeah.
piece there. So yeah.
I like that connection. I resonate with what you're saying because like stuff could be going down, but I get on the bike and it's like it's a happy spot. As you say, I'm smiling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, like a lot of times, like part of why we exist is because as mental and physical health is more on a decline in the United States, bicycles, as we know, are scientifically proven to increase mental and physical health. So that's for us. We want people to be able to enjoy their life. And in order to do that, we believe that if people are riding bikes more, they will enjoy their life more and they'll be able to enjoy the ride of life.
Yeah. Your comment there makes me think, yeah, I've had several conversations with retailers who are exploring, bikes for recovery, bikes for mental health. That is a trend I'm noticing as well, Scott.
Yeah. And I think Specialized has a whole outride program, and that's all focused on ADHD and helping kids get that energy and get focused. So I think there's been a lot of studies done on it. So it is fascinating when you start equating your local community that if you want to have a direct effect, then partnering with the people that are working in those spaces in recovery groups, with the hospitals, with those that are in need, bicycles start to answer a lot of questions that are out there and answer a lot of the problems.
Yeah. There's so much to get into. So listeners, it's Bike and Soul. It's a bike repair and nonprofit. The website is bikeandsoul.com, and we will link to that in our show notes.
And I want to say it's Soul, SOL, like the sun, because I think some people hear pastor and it's soul, but we actually made sure that we were doing SOL because we were trying to do like bikes and sun and make it a sunny kind of thing.
That is a good call out. So Bike and Soul, SOL, as in the sun. Thank you for that, Scott. So Bike and Soul, though, started like it didn't start as a full service bike shop. It actually started as an after school workforce development program. Can we talk about this and how you did transition into a bicycle store?
Yeah, it's a great story, I think, because we were a community center at the time. Our local YMCA decided to build a brand new a $22.5 million Y. And in the building of that Y, I knew that my little community center wasn't going to be able to attract kids because we had this whole new, bigger and awesome community center. So in that process, I worked for the Y for a year, transitioned all my after school programming to them and worked with them on that. And I felt like, okay, I need to come up with a new after school program that's different than what the Y or anybody else in town is doing. We saw the kids need to learn how to work. And as I researched, these earn a bike programs that people were doing in these different cities and stuff seemed to be a really good place to teach kids how to work. So I got a friend of mine, Dick Fox, to come on with me. He's an old time mechanic and he created a training program. And I was the first student of the training program and tested it out on me and figured it out. And we had this whole earn a bike. We got the bikes donated to us. We started to get some students and we started working through that. It was probably within less than 2 months, people in the neighborhoods, we were doing in the back shed. So everybody would see us working on bikes and see the kids in there and hearing about it. And they'll be like, hey, can you fix my flat tire? Hey, can you adjust my handlebars? Hey, can you? And now we need to get parts. So we started getting more bikes and we had about 200 bikes in the backyard and we would pick out of that. And then we started realizing like, wait, bikes are really complex and not everything's an old school Schwinn, that parts are universal, right? And next thing you know, we need to buy parts. So we contacted JBI, Liam at JBI, and he's like, well, Scott, you need to be a bike shop. So you need to have a public sign, you need to have insurance, and you need to have a name. And I'm like, well, I have public space, I have a name, and I have insurance. I've come up with a new name. And he's like, well, look, you also have to have retail space. I said, so if I go to Walmart, buy 5 inner tubes and throw them on the walls at my retail space? He's like, sure, just show me you're selling some product.
Yeah.
So we sat around, we came up with a name. We put a banner outside the shed. He came out, took pictures, and we officially became a bike shop.
I love stories like this. Like bikes weren't even part of the picture. You were just trying to come up with an after school program for youth. And then it just kind of trickles when you see the need. And a lot of people, Scott, might be like, this is too much, but you just stayed with it and you made it happen. And now Bike and Soul is described as like a hub for transportation. You're providing the means of transportation, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
blown into that, right?
Yeah, what was interesting is as we grew and kept taking over more space in the property, our notoriety got larger. And the first 5 years was really like, we're an after school program, we have kids, and we're really like a hobby shop. So we didn't have a lot of volunteers. It was student-based predominantly. People came by, got their bike fixed, and then that boom in COVID, that really changed us because, as we all know, there was this big bubble that happened, and people were grabbing their phones and saying, bike shop near me. We have a 5-star Google rating. And now folks are coming in for half hour, 45 minutes away. And because we're used bikes predominantly at the time, well, at that time we were used bikes. Well, we had inventory and we had lots of it. So we grew 5 times our size within a matter of 1 year. I went from 2 adult volunteers to 15 volunteers. And that bubble transformed us into what I now say is we're a bicycle shop that happens to have a student program, where before we were a student program that happened to be a bike shop.
Yeah. So when you say student, just to get some clarity, like, what's the age group of the children or the?
Sure. Unsupervised, it means a parent can drop their child off from 6th grade to 12th grade. And that's our earn a bike window. And then we have an apprenticeship after that. If they're an elementary school child, we ask that there is some type of parent, guardian, grandparent, aunt, uncle, someone that is an adult that's with them. We found that elementary school kids, their attention span for fixing things is really short. Taking it apart, they'll do that for hours.
Yeah.
So that's the space that we focus on. And then if there are adults that want to learn things, we let them come in. We have certain nights that will allow for community projects. Or if someone just says, hey, I love to learn how to change my tire. Sure, come on in, we'll show you. We haven't gotten into classes yet because usually a lot of times we just try to do one-offs right now, but we have thought about doing classes maybe too.
Yeah. I'm just thinking back. I'm thinking how our listeners who are retailers could do something similar in their community. We're not talking about, as full born as your path was. Perhaps it is, I guess. I'm just thinking when we worked with a Boys and Girls Club, we just started, at my shop, we just brought some tools over, took up a space. And we had 2 students, and then as you said, it multiplied. So this could be something, Scott, you think that the retailers could do at their facility or partner with another organization and just kind of just go for it and see what happens?
I'm shocked at how many kids don't know how to fix their bikes. And a lot of kids are still riding like single speed wheelie bikes, BMX bikes, cruisers. I think if a shop would actually just reach out to any organization that works with students that says, hey, do you have any bike riders? And I think sometimes we don't think about promotion at a relational level. We think about it more from a product level. But for us, what we've noticed is that the kids might come in and we might fix their bike for free. A lot of students, we just fix their bikes for free. We just want them to keep riding. But then mom and dad come in for Christmas time. Mom and dad come in for birthdays. Mom and dad come in because they got their bikes that need to be fixed, right? So I think sometimes it's easy in retail land to focus on the sales numbers and not think about the larger impact that's going on around us. And the other side of it is you might meet your future mechanic 3 years from now.
I was going to say it's a great pool of up and coming future employees.
Yeah.
Just back to Bike and Soul, big picture. I also read that you launched a USA cycling race team this year, which seems like, oh my God, Scott, add another thing. What inspired that, and how does that connect? Is that just part of the community, like just helping the diverse, youth or just community members reach their goals?
Yeah. So we have had an attitude here that we have no box. I find that when you put yourself in a box, you stay in the box and you come up with all the reasons why you shouldn't be outside the box. Here, we just say there's no box. So our growth and our story has always been, if it has to do with bikes and somebody wants to do it, then let's try it. We had 2 students. One was my son and his buddy. And they're like, hey, and we live really close to Truxelltown Velodrome. We're a half hour away. So Velodrome life is part of what we do. We go up to watch the races and things. They're like, hey, why don't we try? I wouldn't mind trying that out. Let's see what that's like. So contacted Ethan Hendricks, who's a pro rider, races for Star Trek and Elves, former student of mine. He was one that wasn't a mechanic. He liked to take pictures. So he would take pictures for me and we would fix his bike. And that's how we volunteered and we worked together. And he took us up to the track, a couple of us adults and a couple kids. We raced around on some fixies and we had a blast. My son and his friend are like, hey, we'd like to do this. I was like, all right, Ethan, so what club should they join? Like, where do I start them out? How does this work? Do they have to get a coach? He's like, oh, I just think they should join Team Bike and Soul. And I'm like, and there we are standing in the velodrome. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I'm a certified coach now. Let's do it. And everyone's like, yeah. I'm like, whoa, if we're doing this, then I'm racing. And at that time I was 40 pounds more. I was a bigger boy than I am now. And I was like, let's go. So this past October, we launched Team BSR and we put some folks on podiums. We had 6 riders this year. We have another 25 that are getting added. And the big thing that we do that's different in our racing team is under 18s race for free. We have 4 professional coaches that are volunteering their time to coach, just like you would see the local soccer league. And we want kids racing. We think that racing should be for everybody. We're actually doing a search for speed kind of attitude where we're doing a talent search right now. Our community days this weekend, we've been setting up Zwift trainers and doing power testing on kids and adults. And we're out recruiting and we're getting folks on board. We're looking to do mountain biking. Tonight we'll be up at the Emmaus 5th Street Cross, and we'll be doing cyclocross. And our goal is that if a kid wants to race, we want to help them go fast and train them. We use Training Peaks. We have a full-on training program with our coaches. And like myself, I've been on a riding regiment. I race on Zwift as well as in-person races. And it's been this amazing journey this year to turn into an athlete and to watch all this unfold. And the 2 guys that helped start it are 2 students. They both podium at a state crit competition this year, championship. So yeah.
I can feel your energy and passion and your excitement for this. And yeah, giving kids an opportunity to try to race I mean, there's a lot of things involved there, having the equipment, just the bike, the other gear, getting to the race fees, the coach. So helping children explore this side of the sport is job well done, Scott. And I can,
thanks.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's actually to the point where like some of the bikes are behind me. We have a whole stable of bikes, of track bikes, so people can use them. We have like a library that you can check bikes out. And this year, because of our growth that we had, we're actually getting one of our storage units. I bought a sea container. We're taking everything out of our current storage unit, putting in the sea container, and we're going to be creating an indoor training center for this winter.
Oh my gosh. Great work. Yeah, you just you do have to be ready to pivot and ready to evolve and listening to what your community needs and be there. I think your background is interesting. I heard you say when we were talking about the background of Bike and Soul that you actually took the class. So you weren't a mechanic when you started this, like you were actually the first official student.
Yes.
Scott. What?
Yeah, and now I'm a master mechanic and I teach others and place in bike build off competitions. And yeah, I've learned over the years, like I think sometimes humans get stuck between organic and programmatic, and we create this polarity where like organic's like, I'm not going to think about it at all. We're just going to let it all naturally happen, right? And then there's the programmatic side where we try to plan everything out and keep it rigid. That's where I try to stay intentional. So like with this, I'm like, okay, wait a second. If we're going to do an Earn a Bike program, I need to know how to fix bikes. I can't just tell kids to come and you'll have fun with Mr. Fox. Like, no, like you need to come and let's go fix bikes together. And so everything that I get involved in, I never ask anybody to do something as the leader that I'm not willing to do myself.
Mm-hmm.
So around here, that's kind of the joke that we have, is that because of the intentionality of everything, nobody ever challenges me sometimes to do stuff because they know I'm going to go do it too, but I got to do this over here. So either you can do this, either you can clean the bathroom and I'll fix that bike, or you fix that bike and then I'll go clean the bathroom, right? Like, and that's how we operate. So that's just how I've always been. I was taught growing up that way. I was taught in business by some good leaders and managers that you need to be willing to do the work yourself. You never should be above anything that you do.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good philosophy, and I adhere to that as well. I'm thinking about, okay, we are a nonprofit organization, and I don't know if you have business background or like,
Yep.
how are you juggling that side of things? Because you're running, you know, you need revenue coming in so you can keep growing and offering these programs. Do you find that challenging, or does that come natural or easy to you? Or do you
So I have a business background. I have a degree in business. Been an entrepreneur for years. I find that I think what happens with a lot of nonprofits is they get stuck in the tension of providing their service and also how to finance it. I ran a thrift store for a couple of years. I was on the board of a thrift shop, and I had to step in as the director for 6 months. And I found that it was in that process that I started to realize that here at Bike and Soul, I didn't want us to be like, donations are great, grants are awesome, but I didn't want that to be the pillar of what we did. I wanted this to be self-sustaining and be a business, because by being a business, my students, when they come in, they actually, like, if there's a student that is going for accounting, well, come on in, let's play with the accounting world. If you're an artist, come on in, let's do some artwork. Like, it creates this business space. And I think too, with business, if you run a business well, you're in tune with the community and the market that you're in. So the relational side happens. So for us, running off of donations, there's a lot of people that don't want to sell their stuff on Facebook. They don't want to sell it on Craigslist. They don't want to try to put it out on the curb and try to sell it. They're happy to donate their equipment to us. They're happy to donate their extra parts. And it creates this community around the bikes. So for us, running it as a business, it's just something that's been a part of me, and we still have a business philosophy. If you were to look at us, you probably wouldn't know we're a nonprofit. And that's what we like. Like, we love when someone's surprised that we're a nonprofit bike shop, because they came in because they heard about our professionalism and how good we are.
Yeah, thank you for explaining it that way, because I would think you would need to run it as a business because you're responsible for keeping this nonprofit going. But there's also that side of, okay, we can take the revenue that we make and we can put it towards programming, and we can grow this side of what we're doing. I mean, you do powder coating, painting, custom bike builds. I'm sure that there's tools and books you need for the education. And I mean, so it's interesting to think of it that way. I mean, what's your team look like? So there's you, but you must, Scott's laughing. You've got to have some, it sounds like you're really relying on a lot of volunteers. Are they the same volunteers year over year, or how does that work?
Yeah. So I guess the best way to say this is we're like a pirate crew. And the reason why I say that is like, if you think of like Captain Jack Sparrow, like, that's how we are. Like, people have their roles, but everybody knows they might have to pinch in here and there. Someone might have to hoist a sail today. So our volunteer crew, we have Mr. Fox is like my standby. He's the old guy that sits in the corner. He's got all the funny jokes that everybody laughs at, but wishes he wouldn't crack them because they're just those dad jokes, you know. We've got Jacob, who is one of my former students, and he volunteers here on a regular, and he's a quiet guy. He fixes everything. And I've got Christine, who's turned into like my shopkeeper. Matt is Christine's husband, and he's my business guru that sits on the side. He's the one that tells me everything I'm doing wrong, right? Like he's that, like, we have these cast of characters that are here, and Brad is our teddy bear, and he's just always bouncing around and keeping everybody happy. And he's also the one that thinks he has to own every bike in the shop, right? Like, so I have this like group of adults that are constantly loving on people. I have an even larger group of adults, like Phyllis has been with us the longest, and she's a retired maternity nurse, but she loves bikes, and she can never remember how to tune a bike, but she keeps trying, right? Like that's like our joke. So, and I say a ship crew because I tell everybody, like, if anyone else wants to run this place, feel free. Like, you can take over, have a mutiny, take over. Like, I'll be happy to, like, and nobody ever wants to, right? So like, that's always the joke. But we try to keep sailing. We keep having the wind at our backs. And the students, some of my students stick long, some are short. Most of our students usually last through middle school. And then when they get into high school, it's time to get a job. So then that's the unique thing about our workforce program is once you're volunteering with us, when you go for your first job, we will give you 2 adult references to wherever you're applying.
Oh, wonderful.
And that's the graduation degree, right? Like that's where you know you made it. So for us, we want our middle school volunteers to age out and get out of here. We want them to go fly in a job place, and we want them to go work, and we want them to go explore cycling and that kind of thing. That's also why racing is cool too for us, because it creates a different space for us to engage students. So if they're not mechanically inclined, but they're riding inclined, then we can also engage that space with them and keep those relationships going.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like I have the sense that you have really built an environment that's very positive and like a yes environment. So whatever the person's goal is, if it's to race or bikes for transportation, or just to learn how to become mechanics, or maybe just fix up, an old bike, or just get a bike for fitness, you have created an environment where yes is the word. Like you make that possible.
Yeah, that's how we got into electric bikes.
Scott's like, I wish I didn't. But that is something that not many retailers, I think, are fully capable of doing, creating that environment that's just very positive and warm, and whatever the question is, the answer is yes. Within certain parameters, right? Like,
well, what we say is we'll try.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always a yes, it's a we'll try. I think in the world we live in, we have an attitude of everything needs to happen now. So people are used to yes and no. They're not used to hearing someone say, we'll try. In that process of saying we'll try, that creates a relationship, and we're communicating. And in that process of trying, it might work, it might not. And it creates that expectation for the customer to realize that, like, hey, if you're willing to give us $50, we'll give it a shot and we'll see what happens. So that's also that. The other side of it too is an empowerment space. I found that certain managers and leaders that I worked under and worked with over the years, by giving that space for trying, that's where the experimentation happens. That's where things start to open up. I remember when we first worked on hydraulic brakes, that was the joke. We're not going to do hydraulic brakes. We're going to put a limit. When the hydraulics first came out, we started seeing, and then all of a sudden a set came in, and I had to try them out, and I did them. And Mr. Fox is like, why'd you do that? Now we have to work on brakes because you learned how. And I'm like, yep. Well, now you see hydraulic brakes all the time, and it's a norm. And I think that's where, for us, keeping the we'll try it out, we'll see if we can do it attitude, creates the innovation going too.
I like that, because I also think that your customers, if you have a race team and maybe they don't know about racing, now they're thinking about, all right, I'll try that. Or
Yep.
even like mechanics, it probably just kind of gets in the, yeah. What about the shop space now? I know that you have, I think, changed locations over the years, but what is the business, or what does the shop space look like now?
Okay, so we've always been on the same property. We just kept taking over the property. So we started out in the back shed, and our property is an old church building built in the 1890s. And so we have a storage trailer that was an old construction trailer that we converted into storage space. So we've got that. We have a sea container that's turned into our walk-in warehouse area. And then we have the actual church building itself. And if you go online and look at our pictures, you can see all the different space that we have. It's a really neat, open, stained glass building, horrible for heating in the winter and horrible for air conditioning in the summer, but we make it work. And it's this beautiful open space. We have a basement area that we're using right now as a race headquarters for the team. And that's also gets used for Young Life meetings. And we also hold some music events down there too, as well as we also do music events in the shop. Once a year, we do what's called Make Music Up or Perk. And we clear out the area and use the front stage, and we set up when we host music events that day as well. So we try to have open space. The other funny thing about us is we have 3 stories worth of bicycles.
Wow.
Because a Walmart actually closed up in our area and I bought their racks. So we have 3 stories high of bikes on either side with the stained glass behind them. So you get to go to church with bikes. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, the pictures online really, I mean, so we see a slew of bikes in a great open space, really presented nicely. And then I'm sure you have accessories somewhere in a repair shop as well. So is it all used, or do you do some new as well, Scott?
So this past year, we started doing new, and that's a new venture for us. We started carrying electric bikes in 2023, and then we moved into traditional bikes. We're carrying Fairdale and Surly, and that's been a really neat, because we wanted to get a new bike that was a tier up from our used bikes. And that's where we moved to, because predominantly our used bikes are name brand bikes. It's very rare that we have a big box store bike on the floor anymore.
Yeah. And I noticed, like, just talking about the way you operate your hours. So we're closed 3 days a week, and then our hours the other days a week are limited, like 1 to 5 on Wednesday, Thursday. And then people can also schedule appointments. I feel like retailers are always grasping with this. Should I be open Monday? Should I be closed? How many days a week? What are your thoughts on your hours? Does that serve you well?
I think we need to be open more. We're going to be working on that this coming year because we grew. The reason why we kept afternoon hours is we found that while we're open, people want to come see us, which is great. But if you want to get work done, it's hard. So what we ended up doing, we used to be open in the mornings, and then COVID shifted that, and we stay open in the afternoons. We used to have evening hours during the week, and people were barely ever coming in the evenings. We live in a predominant bedroom community type atmosphere, so people are traveling during the day. So Saturdays are our busiest days, 9 to 2 on Saturdays. We're jamming, we're rocking at 10 a.m. Like by 10 a.m., we're hustling, and we don't do any mechanic works on Saturdays. That's all pure sales on a Saturday. We don't even have people unless it's just tire changing and that kind of thing. So we found that keeping a limited hour space, people come in, it's focused, you're there. And then in that off time, you can be working on checking an inventory. You can be handling the sales floor. You can be doing some cleanup. You can work on some special projects, and it creates a different space. The other thing for us too is because we're volunteer based, I don't get the luxury of telling someone you need to be here during these times, and that's what you will do, and I will pay you for it. So next year we're looking at doing some part-time employee atmosphere to be open during the day on a Monday and Tuesday and have more of a morning to afternoon hours. And we're going to try to experiment with that. But I believe that hours need to work with the community you're in. Up here in our school district, most restaurants are closed on Mondays because it's not worth it. And I think if your business isn't making enough money that day, don't be open. Shut down that week. If you're constantly losing on a Wednesday, close up on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Why be open? Why waste the money? Have a day off.
Your data can tell you for sure. Yeah. Scott, I want to get in a little bit more into your used inventory. So I'm assuming people just come and drop off bikes, or like how does you have a huge selection? Is there any bikes you don't take, or do you take everything and then maybe take some metal to the scrap yard, or how?
Yes, we take everything, because once you start picking and choosing and telling people not to bring something, then they're going to take it somewhere else. So what I've learned is that we just take everything, and then we do what's the triage. We have 2 large bike racks out back. People can drop off 24 hours a day. And then we go through and we pick, and the things that we want to get inside right away, we get them inside. Things that could stay out a little bit longer, we might leave them outside a little bit. Some things go right to the scrap pile. We also pick and choose parts. See, here's what's nice about working on used bikes. You can put used parts on a used bike.
Mm-hmm.
So we do a lot of collecting. We do a lot of stripping. It's fascinating to me how there's a market for recycled parts with especially like vintage mountain bikes or vintage bikes. So if we see something that like the whole bike itself isn't worth anything, but there might be some parts off of it, we'll pull those off. We'll try to sell those individually. And it's also a lot of fun. It's like picker's paradise right there in the backyard.
I imagine. And how deep the used bikes right now for many retailers are a great source of revenue. It's also a great source of having an item to offer to a rider who maybe can't afford the higher price points of entry-level bikes. How far do you go with the refurbishment of these? I mean, I know you do some painting. Do you have a set rule, or does it depend on bike how much you refurbish each one?
We try to shoot for an average cost of $50.
Okay.
If we look at something and it's going to cost us more than $50 to fix it, we have to look at the quality of it and will we get a return. We shoot to average making a profit of $100 to $150 a bike.
Okay.
That is on an adult bike. Now, obviously, a kid's bike, we just pump those out. Teenager bikes, like a 24-inch mountain bike, things like that, we'll usually shoot for like a lower price point on those, under 200. Most of the bikes that we sell for our area run around $200 to $300. We will also spruce them up. We call them smoothies, where we'll take a vintage mountain bike, an 80s and 90s mountain bike, and we'll put the nice smooth tires, fat tire cruiser tires on it. We'll one by it up front, put the BMX bars on there, and we dress it up. And we have a lot of rails to trails around here, so people love the town cruiser type. And if you remember those 80s, 90s mountain bikes, they had the really flashy colors to them. So you can really add some neat sheathing. So within about an hour, we can create something without even painting that's custom, and it's a one-off design that someone walks out the door at $300. And we might have spent new tires and some sheathing, and everything else, it was the original parts on the bike. And we're also for handlebars. So we try to keep our price point on those at like a third of the cost in parts, and then the rest is just your time and effort that you put into it.
Those are some of the coolest bikes too, like some of those 80s, 90s mountain bikes. Yeah, I can totally see that. Gosh, all right. So you've got a unique approach to running Bike and Soul, and it seems like you're not afraid to kind of experiment, listen to what your community is asking for, and implement those programs. Any advice that you'd offer to other bike shops, maybe to the retailers who are listening, who want to create a more community focused and like mission focused, like this, like I'll try attitude, that you're doing?
Yeah. The biggest thing that I learned so far is that you need to hear where the problems are. Find the problems that are going on with people and then solve them. Be the guide, be the Gandalf wizard, be the Obi-Wan. Donald Miller, I love his story brand material. He's been a huge asset to me in his writings and Business Made Simple and things like that. One of the things that we found is as we started listening, that's why we started a workforce development program. There's issues with kids in work. When we started working with providing bikes for people that need transportation, we work with Partnership TMA in Montgomery County, as well as some of our nonprofit orgs. If there is someone that needs a bike to get to work, we fix a bike up for them and we get them going. And we let them do all the processing, but that was a need. Our homelessness coalition, if there's someone that needs a bike to get around, we provide that bike. Because when you go use, you can really build something that's inexpensive at your cost. And sometimes these organizations will be able to give back and cover it. And that becomes a very interesting space when you start asking your community leaders, your mayor, your schools, find out where their issues are. And if a bike can solve the problem, come into that space and solve the problem and help them be heroes in their space.
Don't be afraid to get involved. Listen for the need and be the person who solves it. And Donald Miller is great. The story brand is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and I think too, I think sometimes bike shops forget that we're part of a community and we can be community leaders because people ride bikes not just for leisure, they ride it for sport, they ride it for transportation. I mean, and I've heard it before from folks that have been on the podcast, like I feel in America we don't treat bikes like a tool. And I think if we start treating it like a tool more often and not, and if we start teaching and showing people how bikes can impact our life more and be that educator. So when someone comes in, hey, have you ever seen a cyclocross bike? No. Oh, check this thing out. I just want you to see this. Like if we can be educating and taking that time to engage people, getting the folks that communicate with the customers coming in, teaching people about what's out there in biking and helping expand their horizons too, I think is a piece that retailers could really grab a hold of more.
Yeah, don't just solve the problem that they came in for. Like they're looking for a tube or they're looking for lube or even they're looking for a road bike. Don't be afraid to show them a gravel bike or a cyclocross bike and talk about what else is out there as well. Get them excited, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Scott, how does your community know about all that Bike and Soul is doing? How do you communicate the new race team? How do you communicate if you have a instructional class happening?
So social media is huge for us. That's been our bread and butter because that just seems to be the place where people are looking. We watched our trends to see what people like and what they don't like. We try to focus posts that are on that kind of thing. I don't use email probably enough as I should. That's definitely because it's one of those time factors. So email, when we do send out, it's something very urgent or something important that they need to know. Google has been huge for us for doing updates as well, because we found that people use Google a lot. And matter of fact, we work with sales leads that I learned from your podcast and that whole aspect of it and the lead cycles. And that's just been awesome for us. So those are like really specific ways. The other thing is from a community aspect, we're very tied with our Chamber of Commerce. So we look to partner and work with the chamber in those ways. So that's another avenue for us as we're doing things. We have a lot of those relationships so people know what we're doing, and the schools and the nonprofits. Like we make sure that we're coexisting with other folks and we're not an island amongst ourselves.
I love that. Continuing to share the word and of the work you're doing. I noticed on your website there is the website's fantastic. Lots of great.
Thanks.
It really does instill that like you're here to help me ride. Like it's not overly product focused. It's more just like you want to ride, you want to learn how to fix a bike, you want to earn a bike. Like we are the source. Lots of buttons to say like schedule your service, book your appointment. Do people use those buttons? Like I've been encouraging retailers to get this on their website, to do the same thing.
Yes. Matter of fact, we moved to appointments during COVID because I was running the shop by myself when Pennsylvania said that bike shops were essential 2 weeks into the shutdown. I was here by myself and it was getting overwhelming. So we moved to just using, at that time we were using Square as our cash register. We moved to appointments. We then moved to Lightspeed later because we were getting so busy. And in that process of the appointments, we were actually doing like instant, like the haircut attitude, where if you brought your basic service into us, where we were just tuning your bike, in 1 hour, it was going to get done. And I was blocking appointments. Now we've moved to Beeline and we're going with a 1-day turnaround on basic tune-ups, which has been really great. The appointments, the call to actions, doing that. The problem with a website is if you're not selling a product, you need some type of buy-in from someone when they want to use you. So by doing the booking appointments, that gets people to say, I'm in it, I'm there, I'm going to show up. The other thing it does is if they're not sure if they should book an appointment or if they can't book an appointment, then they're going to pick up the phone and call us. And now they're like, hey, do I have to book an appointment? No, you don't have to. You can just come in, but it's forcing them to call us or to text us or to message us. And that's the other piece. When we coupled lead cycles in with what we were doing, the texting off of our website, the booking the appointments, using Beeline, everything kind of works. So if someone is virtual, they're going to communicate with us somehow. The other piece that I'll say about the appointments is it also helps us from a workflow standpoint. We have 3 workstations running every day minimum. We have up to 7 that can be running in one day. And that also helps me manage and see what loads coming in to say like, okay, these people are coming or this, or we're probably going to need to order some product for that job, or it's a warranty issue coming in for this e-bike. And it helps us to know what days I'm going to need people for.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm just thinking, you personally, you're busy, I'm sure. You're still working as a pastor. You're involved as the face of Bike and Soul. You've got the race team. It sounds like you're racing yourself a little bit.
Yep.
I mean, you're probably really excited about 2025, right?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm fascinated as I'm now 49, going to be 50 next year. I'm going, wow, who would ever thought I'd be here right now?
Life surprises us like that. I like that. What do you see as hurdles or opportunities? I guess if you think about the way Bike and Soul is running now, you said next year you might experiment with some actual part-timers, maybe to open up on those Mondays or Tuesdays. Like what's the plan for next year? Anything?
Yeah, so we're going to be ending our 10th year in existence, and I'm asking the question now. I spent the past 10 years reacting to our growth. So I want to ask the question, how do we plan for growth? So the next 3 years, we're putting together a plan that will show us where we're going and what we're doing. I want to also explore this year a web show. I want to be able to highlight racers that are in the velodrome. We're going to be working with Mav, who's a video production company that we've worked with in the past. I believe that I want to go after community more. We have a good system down here. We know how to fix bikes well. We know how to sell bikes well. We know how to keep people riding. Now we want to start helping people come together in that riding. So with the racing, how do we get more folks up to the velodrome to watch their local kids and their local adults racing? How do we get folks to be engaging more with the sport, even if they're not racing? So that's a piece. The racing side of stuff we see as an expansion point for us. The other thing that I question a lot of too is just what's the purpose for us with e-commerce? Do we want to play in that space? Do I have to? We do a lot of drop shipping now for customers that need orders, and that's been great. So I think that's going to be an exploring point. The other side, I believe, is just electric bikes. It's a wide open frontier. So how do we own that space and be experts? We're a service center for 21 brands. And for some folks, they'll travel an hour to an hour and a half just to get their bike fixed by us. So how do we tell the world that we're here for that? So I think it's really for us at the end, it's charting the waters, looking how to grow, and how do we want to tend to this garden as our crops growing? Because I feel like we're very established now. We know what we do. We know who we are. And yeah, that's it.
Scott, I like those plans, and I'm with you. I hear what you're saying, and I'm thinking about the decline in ridership numbers, and a lot of retailers are seeing not as many people come through their door. And I'm thinking, okay, how can we, as the NBDA, as the industry at large, get more people on bikes in general? So not just get people back into our store, but reach people who maybe haven't found that smile from riding a bike. Any thoughts on how we do that, Scott?
Yep. Be in your community. I'm going to tell you right now.
You for the last hour, Heather.
No. I mean, but I say it because I think a lot of retailers forget that they live in a community, that they have a business in a community, that their employees, that they're like whatever you're doing, whether you're a nonprofit place or retailer, if you don't know the pulse of your town and that bikes solve most of the problems, you're missing out. I sit in rooms with people and I'm like, yeah, we could do a bike thing with that. Oh yeah, we'll bring bikes out for it, or we'll do this, or hey, can I do, like, we started First Fridays, and that's just an event where our community gets together with the Chamber of Commerce. It's on the one street. I was like, hey, I'll hand out stickers that day. What do you mean you hand out stickers? Well, I mean, I can't really do test rides. It's gonna be a crowded street. So I put a couple of bikes out, a couple e-bikes, and I stand there and I hand out stickers to the kids. Well, now all of a sudden everybody wants to stop and talk to me. Oh, what's Bike and Soul? What's Bike and Soul? See, I think we forget that there's easy touch points when we're actually being with people. And then people will say, oh, I remember my bike when I was a kid. Well, what do you ride now? Oh, I don't. Well, did you like riding when you were a kid? Yeah. Well, then why aren't you riding now?
Yeah.
And you can start, and again, it's not, you don't have to set up this massive booth and haul out all this product. Like, it's, people always remember when they first rode a bike. Everybody remembers that. And I think that's the key, is getting people to remember that and then showing people where they can ride. And for us here, like, we're working with our community to build more bike pathing areas. We're talking about our alleys, and they're great to ride bikes. So what if businesses started opening the backs of their businesses more to the alleys and getting people to ride in the alleys in our town? And how do we do that? So if we can start leading in the solutions and let bikes do what bikes do, and that's provide joy. And let's be the joy bringers. Let's bring that joy to people again, and stop worrying about the lower ridership. Stop worrying about the declining economy. Stop worrying about all that stuff, because there will always be something out there for us to fight against, but we always bring joy when you ride a bike.
Yeah.
And if you're, the one thing that I know, I think that everybody says, is when you run a bike shop, you're not going to have a lot of money extra because you're in a bike shop, and we like getting people riding. So own that, own that you're not going to be this, castle on the hill billionaire, and own that you get to bring joy to people when they ride a bike.
Oh my God, Scott. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love bringing joy to people. So I hear that loud and clear.
I mean, I've never seen anybody mad when I fix their bike.
Right?
Right? And I'll tell you this story. This was really funny. Someone came in and I told them they need more work done on their bike. They got a basic tune-up. And I said, listen, ride this. If you have any issues, bring it right back. I did some tweaking. I had to say, she comes back. She's like, oh, this rides horribly. I don't like the work you did. I was like, okay, great. I went in the cash register. I handed her $75. She's like, what are you doing? I said, you didn't like the work. I said, so I'm giving it back to you, and let me fix your bike now. And she's like, no, just trust me. So I got it all working. This and I said, you still need tires. And she's like, I know, I heard you. She goes, why'd you give the money back? I said, because you can't go on Google and complain about the bad service you got because you didn't get bad service, because I just did it for you for free. Guess what? She came back 3 weeks later because her tire was done. And she's like, yep, I need new tires. And she spent money on it. And she looked at me and she goes, you're brilliant. I'm like, why? She goes, I'm spending more money with you right now, and you're an amazing bike shop, and I will keep coming back to you. You lost money over here, and now you're making money on me here. I said, yeah, because I saw what kind of tires you had. I knew I was going to make money somehow.
You're just, yes, you're being a good human. You're taking care of your customers, and not sweating this, don't sweat the small stuff. Like, the big picture is what we're doing is changing lives. I mean, your community is really fortunate to have you. How can we help Bike and Soul? We've got lots of listeners. We've got suppliers, we've got retailers, we've got sales reps, we've got advocates, we've got riders. Is there anything that Bike and Soul needs?
So there's three things that I would love to put out to the bike land world. One is, if you know anybody that has raced, still racing, that has extra gear laying around, we would love to have it, and we'll pay for the shipping. I know we've had some stuff come in from different riders already that have raced. We have this, so I don't care if it's track bikes, I don't care if it's road bikes, I don't care if it's parts, if it's cogs, if it's whatever. If you have stuff that's been sitting around is dusty, and you're not going to sell it, then send it our way. We'd love to see that. The next thing is, for those that are in the manufacturing world, parts and things like that, we're always looking for partnerships. We're always looking for ways to highlight product, and we're always looking for new relationships. So we're always excited to explore different things and explore programming. And if you want to even have us test stuff or try things out or experiment, we're always looking for that. And the final piece is this. I think every town needs some type of earn a bike program for kids to ride. I think every town needs to develop workforce development to teach kids how to work. So if you're interested in opening up a Bike and Soul, and it doesn't even have to be us, or if you're a nonprofit now, or you volunteer with the local nonprofit, we want to talk. I think the NBDA has a really neat opportunity to support some of these community works that if we all start working together and finding ways to navigate the waters together and start more of a national network of buying, of shifting around product. Like if you know people need these kind of tires and we don't use these anymore, ship them. Like I just think there's ways that we could creative co-op and work together more. So if you're interested in that, I'd love to talk about that too.
I love that, Scott. And I don't know if you know the work that the NBDA is doing, but we just did a press release in Brain. We are focused on making resources, expanding our resources for nonprofits and co-ops, and creating our monthly virtual event series to include one just for nonprofits and co-ops to get together and collaborate and see what we can do. So I've got your back. If listeners, you just put a couple call outs. If people want to get in touch with you, if they want to just ask you more questions, is there a contact you're willing to share?
Yeah, it's really easy. You can go right to our website, hit us up on Facebook, or you can just email me directly, scott@bikeandsoul.com.
Awesome. Scott, thank you so much. Like, I love this conversation. I love getting to know you more. The work you're doing is fantastic. And I'm hopeful our listeners do reach out and support you and ask questions. And yeah, thanks, Scott.
You bet. Thanks for having me. I look forward to seeing where everything goes in the future.
Thank you for tuning into Bicycle Retail Radio, presented by the National Bicycle Dealers Association. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, please like, subscribe, or leave us a review. Sharing this podcast with your friends helps us reach more listeners and continue to bring you the best content. Remember, we host 2 shows per week with ever-changing guests and fresh content to keep you both informed and inspired. The National Bicycle Dealer Association is committed to providing valuable events, webinars, and opportunities for industry education and connection. Stay up to date by visiting nbda.com to see our event calendar. Special thanks to Francis Abbott for the promotional graphics for today's episode. If you're interested in advertising on Bicycle Retail Radio or have a guest suggestion, visit nbda.com to learn more. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on Bicycle Retail Radio.